Miter Saw Use and Safety Edition. So this is a miter saw. So a miter saw is intended for crosscuts. If I want to cut this way against the grain, that's a crosscut. If I want to cut it along the grain, with the grain, that is a rip cut. The miter saw is not intended for rip cuts. It's intended for crosscuts. Before you start using the miter saw, there are a few things that you should be wearing or not wearing. One thing you should not be wearing, jewelry, right? Rings, necklaces, anything like that. Don't wear it, okay? Gloves, also a really bad thing to be wearing, because if you wear gloves, the blade can catch the fabric and pull your hand into the blade. Not good. If you are not wearing gloves and the blade hits you, you can just pull your hand away and you're going to get cut, but your damage is limited. Also, you should tie back your hair. Never really had that problem. So, for those of you who do have long hair, tie it in the back, whatever, put it up, make sure it's not in the way where it's going to get, pulled into the blade. So I told you what not to wear, but a few things that you should wear. On my handle, I've got some safety glasses so that I never forget to put on eyewear before I start using the miter saw. I've also got some ear protection here. The miter saw gets to be very loud, but when I run my shop vac, that sometimes is even more loud than the miter saw. And when you've got both of them running, it's pretty loud. Okay. The dust collection on miter saws doesn't usually work that great. It's better than no dust collection, but still not that great. And so every time you use the miter saw, you're going to be creating sawdust. And breathing in sawdust, not that great for your lungs. If you're going to put it on, probably put it on before you put your ear protection on, so that you can get your mask around there. Let's talk about the components of the miter saw. Whenever you're messing around with it, adjusting it, moving it, whatever, have it unplugged so that you are not in danger of injuring yourself. The blade is under here, right? This is a 10-inch blade. You can get miter saws that are smaller, that take a 7.5-inch blade, I believe. You can also get miter saws that are bigger, that will take a 12-inch blade. Covering the blade is the blade guard. And you notice if I want to show you the blade, I've got to pull it back, and it's spring-loaded, so it automatically goes back into place. But when I'm cutting with the saw, it automatically retracts. So I don't need to be messing with the blade guard while I'm actually trying to cut something. So this is the table of the miter saw. Okay, you want this to be nice and flat. Okay, and in the middle of our table, we've got the throat plate here. The throat plate can be removed. You can also make your own throat plate. And one of the reasons why you might want to do that is because you can make a zero clearance throat plate. The benefit of a zero clearance throat plate, so you have more support for your workpiece and generally have less tear out. It's safer, and it also gives you generally a better cut quality. I'm doing a little shortcut by having this basically yellow sticker. This is the fence of the miter saw. The fence should be at 90 degrees to the table. When you're cutting something, you want the material to be secure against both the table and against the fence, because otherwise the blade will catch it and start throwing it places. You don't want to try cutting something like this. That's going to end very badly. The fence here is kind of divided, all right? And the reason for that is I can loosen it, slide this over, or even completely off. Here's the trigger, right? But if I try pushing the trigger, it just clicks. It doesn't go all the way in, it just clicks. because right next to the trigger is a safety. So here's the trigger, and here's the safety, right? So I can't push the trigger in all the way unless I've depressed the safety. Then I can do the trigger and do my cut. One of the nice things about the miter saw is being able to cut miters. So on mine, I just push this button down, and then I can turn to a different angle, right? And you can see there are angles designated here. And right here is 0, right? And where it says 0, that's basically making a 90-degree cut on your workpiece. Then there are unlimited angles that you can go to between 50 here, 0, and then 60 over here. But there are a few spots that are more common than others. So for example, this is at 15 degrees, 22.5, 31.6, 45, and then it's blocked over here, but it'll go all the way to 60 and lock you in there. This is a compound miter saw. So it will allow me to do not only adjustments that way, it will also allow me to tilt the blade either way, that direction. The way I do that on this one is I have to release this part, a little thing right here that I also have to move, and then that'll allow me to tilt all the way over here to about 45 degrees, and then all the way back to the other side about 45 degrees. So you're going to want some type of reliable square. So this is just a machinist square. You'll measure not on a carbide tooth. That looks actually pretty square. And let me look from the other side too. Also pretty good. So I'm going to call that good enough. It's also good to check your fence for square. So this is a hold down. So if I'm trying to cut something, I can basically clamp it down like that relatively easily. That way when I'm cutting it, it's not going to move. This guy doesn't go very far over. This right here is about a 5-inch zone from the blade. And you see the little symbol, it says no hands. If you're cutting something that small, you really shouldn't be having your hands over here. There are tools that you can use, $1 million stick or $10 million stick, I think they call it, that allows you to get pressure there without putting your fingers nearby. You could also use a regular stick of some kind. But if you're looking to cut something that's really small, you need to look at how much support you have back here. So there's no support between here and here at the bottom. Okay, there is some support up here, but if you're cutting something that's not that tall, that's not really going to help you at all. So if you're cutting something that's only about that long, that wide, this is not the tool to do that on. Wanting to cut something that is wider than it is long, don't, right? You just don't have the kind of support back here that's going to allow you to do it. It's very likely that the blade's going to catch that workpiece and throw it somewhere. And you don't want that to be at you. When you are getting ready to use the miter saw, you want to consider your workspace, okay? This is a lot cleaner workspace than what I've typically had on my miter saw, because I knew I was doing this about miter saw safety and everything. You don't want a bunch of stuff all around. So you want it nice and clean, nice and clear, so that things aren't going to be interfering with you, things aren't going to be distracting you. You also want to be able to support your workpiece. So this guy is, relatively small. Going to be pretty easy to support with just the hold down there. But what if I'm cutting something a lot bigger? I've got support here, I can clamp that down, and you can see I've also got support over here, right? Because I've basically built this up so that it is pretty much the same height as the table. It's still not the greatest. If I'm cutting something that's 8 feet long, which is not that uncommon, this is not going to give you enough support. What I've been planning to do is basically rebuild my miter saw stand so that I've got much more support on either side. Another big thing is you want your miter saw to be in a secure position. Now that we've kind of understand the components of the saw, so before we make any cuts, we want to consider what we'd be cutting. you want to do this not only for miter saw safety, but also just considering your project. What do you want your end work product to look like? Is that going to be a problem to have a knot in whatever your finished product is? If your project can't have knots in it, you want to make sure you're cutting around the knot and not including that in your finished product. Another thing you want to be looking for is, especially if you're using, reclaimed wood like this, are there any nails in it? Right here, it looks like there is a nail still. And if you can see it shining there, I don't want to be cutting a nail with my miter saw because that'll damage my blade. If I'm cutting wood or I'm cutting aluminum, miter saw should be just fine. But if you're trying to cut through steel or harder materials, miter saw is not the tool for that. I could safely cut that on the miter saw, right? But I'd need to use something to protect my fingers, right? Something to hold it down so that my fingers aren't at risk. I'd rather not cut something like this on the miter saw. I would actually rather use the table saw for that. Now, I just told you earlier that the table saw is for ripping. If you have a cross-cut sled like this, then it can also be for cross-cutting. So if I want to cross-cut that, I can use my stop block, right? Lock that in, and then I can make my cut. Obviously, I need to raise the blade. The cross-cut sled is generally a lot safer for small stock because I can put a stop on here. If I need to make repeated cuts, let's say I need a bunch of pieces cut at 1 inch, bring that in, cut it, remove it, and then I can just go for the next one, cut it, and so I can get repeated cuts that are exactly the same size using the stop block. Hard to do that on the miter saw when you're looking to cut something so small, and that's pretty dangerous. So I can do stop blocks on the miter saw. The easiest way to do it is something like this. I could just take this block, clamp it to the fence. If I want to cut something, I just bring it to that point, make my cut, and then I can advance it and cut it again. And again, I've got exact same size of material using the stop block. But you'll notice this is a lot longer piece than what I was talking about before. So you don't really want to be using this for really small pieces. I'm right-handed. When I'm making cuts, I'm holding the piece with my left, and then I hit the safety with my right hand, and hit the trigger with my right hand, and then come down and cut. Okay. Let's say that my workpiece was on the left side for whatever reason, right? Well, I'm still right-handed, right? So I still want to be right here, right? Not a good idea to twist like that and hold with your left and bring the blade down with your right. Sometimes I do end up using my left with the blade, with the trigger, and have it hold the material with my right. I'm not going to say that I've never crossed the streams, but like with Ghostbusters, don't cross the streams. We talked about securing the material, right? So it's firm against the table, firm against the fence. Okay, I'm clamping it down. You go to cut, you will, depress the safety, hit the trigger, let the blade come up to full speed, okay, before you start bringing it down, and then slowly and smoothly bring it down through the cut, go all the way through, and then when you're done, getting all the way to the bottom, let go of your trigger and safety, let the blade stop, and then come back up. That's especially important if you're using a stop block. If you bring the blade up before it's stopped spinning, it's going to shoot that piece somewhere. That piece that's lodged between the blade and the stop block. If you're not using a stop block, it's less likely to happen, but it still can take that offcut and throw it somewhere. So right now I've got the miter saw so that it doesn't slide, right? So it's only going straight down. And if you don't need to slide in order to make the cut, it's fine to just keep that engaged, right? Keep that lock engaged. So on mine, the lock is right here. So I can lift that up, and that allows me to slide out far enough to where I could cut out here. But if I don't need to be cutting out here, generally better keep that lock engaged. Sometimes though, if you've got a piece of wood that's especially thicker or warped or whatever, there can be a lot of tension in the wood. And so sometimes it can make sense to go partway through, so maybe halfway, and cut all the way through halfway, and then come back out to finish the cut. So that way you're releasing some of the tension in the wood so that it doesn't do crazy things. Most of the time though, it's fine to just go straight through, slowly, smoothly, and you're fine. Plug that in, and I'll connect my dust collection. Oh, my caster wheels don't have any brakes on them, so there's no way for me to really secure this. And so that's not the best for a miter saw stand. Eye protection, ear protection. And then I'm going to turn on the shop vac, and I'll depress the safety, push the trigger, and come all the way through, release the trigger, let the blade come to a stop, and then come back up, and then we can inspect how we did. Here we go. And there's what our cut piece looks like. So you see there's just a tiny bit of tear out right there. Not really too much there or there. So pretty smooth, nice cut. So I'm pleased with that. Always keep it down when not in use. That is probably a good idea. So there is a way to lock it down. So on mine, that feature is just right here. But yours could be different. We're in a different location. That's how it works. Let me know if you have any questions, concerns, jokes. And yeah, hit the like button, subscribe.
Look at that! Wow, brilliant! Beautiful.